think I'm a big boy. I should cope with most of these things on my own. I'm very diffident about talking about these things, my problems. I much rather discuss the pleasant aspects of life with God. If He gave me two hands, a fairly decent brain, and free will, relative free will, I think He expects me to cope, you know? And I don't think I should ask my Father to do my homework for me unless I'm really stuck. If I'm really stuck, I'll ask Him. That's what I get a Father for. There's a difference between courage and audacity. I don't expect my Father to take care of me in any place I can take care of myself. But if I can't take care of myself, you're doggone right, I count on it. But most of my life, I depend on my own resources.
Would you say concerning relative free will that you could redefine it as if you have a capacity for a gallon of it, you get a gallon and a half?
Sure.
If you have a capacity for 10 gallons of it, you might get 15.
That's right. I think you got more than you can use.
That's right.
Here, if I'm going to get any help, it will be after I've helped myself. And the most perfect illustration I can think of is Andon and Fonda. It was very necessary for those two little savages to cut loose from their animal level tribe. This could have been fatal to the genes. And pressure grew up, jealousy. The twins were brighter, you know. And finally they decided to flee. Now that was strictly their decision. They used nothing but their own human equipment, including the fact that they were personalities. Then the life carriers introduced into their thinking the idea of northward. The twins had no geography. They didn't know what this world was like. It was very important that they not muff this. They got help. Fleeing was their decision. Northward was given to them. And this to me is a good illustration of how human beings get help when they need help. Of course, I think most of the help that human beings think they get from themselves. I think when a man prays honestly and sincerely for the solution to that problem, such prayer is both psychological and spiritual. And many times the solution of the problem comes about because he has done, through prayer, a better job of mobilizing his purely human resources. This produces a result, and he can prove he got an answer. But I'm not so sure the answer came from God. It may have come from within himself. Ruth?
The second condition of effective prayer, you must have honestly exhausted the human capacity for human adjustment.
Right.
You must have been industrious.
This is what evolution means. This is the great difference in principle between Havana and Orvantan. In Havana, it's always been good. It couldn't be otherwise. In Orvantan, it has always been rough. It couldn't be otherwise. Because we're forging things out. Evil appears in Orvantan for the first time. Because all of a sudden, imperfect critters can make choices. And the least that can happen is evil and disharmony, and maladjustment, misadaptation, ugliness. And the worst that can happen is sin and iniquity. Sin arrives, I think, when a creature is so foolish as to fall in love with the equipment which God has given him, namely personality. It's a tremendous endowment. And it's so tremendous that people can fall in love with it. It comes from God. This is self-love. And when self-concepts finally dominate a human being, this disrupts the atomic organization of life, because then the central spirit nucleus no longer exercises governing power over this living system. And that's the adjuster.
Would you please define self-love?
Self-love is when decide that this universe is just for you. Self-love is when you lose the desire to do good to others, and you try to trap all this love and hold it within yourself. Self-love is when you disrupt the ever-flowing circuit of love. And the circuit of love comes from the Father through His sons to mortal creatures. And these mortal creatures should then love each other. And in so doing, they reveal the love of the Supreme. And the circuit is closed as that love returns to the Supreme, from deity through creatures to deity. When you break that circuit, you stop the outflow. And then you become as the Dead Sea is to the Sea of Galilee. There is no outflow in the Dead Sea. It's a crude illustration.
Oh, it's lovely. I think it's a wonderful illustration.
At the evolutional level, something else happens. All this growth becomes possible because God launches a new venture. He has associated with Himself two existential deities. This is you might say, the society of deity. You know, if God didn't have the Son and the Spirit, He'd be lonesome. Who would He talk to? Who would understand Him? It takes infinity of capacity to understand God. And there are two beings who have such infinity of capacity, the second and third person of deity. Could He get by with one? It wouldn't be good. God could enjoy a partnership with the Son, but a social group requires a minimum of 3 members. And as they say in paper 10, this is the least important of all the reasons for the Trinity, but it is a reason. There is an infinite society, and there are 3 members. Having enjoyed the association of existential deity, the Father goes adventuring in a new area. Let's open up our club to experiential deity. And so, at step 4, we have a new deity appearing in potential. At some moment in time, the spirit person of the Supreme Being appeared. And this is a statement of fact. We are not being allegorical now. The origin of the Supreme Being dates back a large number, but a finite number of years ago. We're not hypothesizing now. This number could be expressed mathematically. The Supreme Being starts as a spirit person somewhere in Havana. He is emerging outward as the collector and the correlator and the totalizer of all of this evolutionary process that we've been considering. And this evolutionary process starts at the human level with the action of the last 2 adjutant mind spirits, because they repercuss in their mother, the creative spirit. And when you get to her, you can see how it could reach the Supreme Being. Every good thing that everyone does in the grand universe contributes to the growth of the Supreme Being. I thought of it this way. If I stand up and pick up a chair, 2 things happen. My muscles are used. This is mine. But my feet push down against the floor just as hard as I lift it up, right? The down thrust belongs to the Supreme Being. Every decision which we make that is of moral, no, maybe moral. I would debate morality, but certainly every spiritual decision we make repercusses in the Supreme Being. Similarly, cancer can break out in the living organism of the grand universe. An infection can break out. That's a better illustration. What happens in your body when you get an infection? Well, your white leukocytes get on their horses. These are the guys with the white hats. They're good guys. And they build a wall around this infected area. They wall it off. Just exactly like they walled this planet off when we got into trouble. This Lucifer rebellion didn't affect the Father's bestowal of thought adjusters, the Son's spirit gravity, the ministry of mind. The paradise deities were immune to this, but not the Supreme Being. He is vulnerable to these things. You cannot hurt the being of the Universal Father. You can probably make him sorrow for you, but you can't hurt his growth because it's a finished thing. You can hurt the growth of the Supreme Being. You can actually scar him because he is dependent on evolutionary success. This is the personalization, powerization, evolution, totalization of everything that's going on out here in time and space, including Havona now. Because Havona is tied into us. Havona has never been the same since the beatniks from time and space first landed. It's changed Havona. When Granfanda landed, the first of the graduate guides was born. The secondary Supernifem began to appear in large numbers. Paradise citizens invaded the inner circuit as the pilgrims from time and space hit the outermost circuit. Even the Havona natives began to exhibit evolutionary trends in Havona. Evolution invaded the central universe from the super universes, just as perfection invaded the super universes from the central universe. This Supreme Being is going to grow all through the present universe age. This second universe age has an origin in time. It'll have an ending in time. Consider what it's going to be like when every world, everywhere, is settled in light and life. We've studied this paper on settlement in light and life. I can't visualize what it's like in the later eras, but just think, where the taxation is easy, and they take 30% of the tax money and spend it on truth, 30% on beauty, 30% on the promotion of goodness, and 10% they put into the insurance reserves for people who have accidents. What a simple government. They don't have any armies, navies, because they've long since lost all need for a police force. And believe me, the police will wither before the army withers. Think what such a creation is like. 7 trillion inhabited worlds, more or less. Each one utopia. Each one having earned utopia. Each one having developed a distinct flavor. What is this flavor? This flavor is the residue of imperfection, which gives each world its characteristic bouquet. Different whiskeys have different flavors, and those flavors are due to the impurities, not to the alcohol. Each of these worlds will have its trace of one-time impurity, which will make it different from any other of these trillion worlds. This again is following the pattern of Havona. There, by fiat of creation, each world was made wholly unique, so much so that when we've seen all of these billion worlds except the last one, we will be wholly unprepared for the surprise of the last Havona world we ever visit. See, the Universal Father is not interested in the dead level of standardization. He's not trying to make everything uniform. It seems to me that he puts a tremendous premium on diversity. He's lavish with expenditure in order to get uniqueness. If the mathematics isn't clear, consider just what takes place in human conception with a steeplechase of the sperms, and how many hundreds of thousands of them are there, and only one is going to be the victim. At the I think the second universe age will end whenever the 7 superuniverses are settled in light and life. And I think this means the end of the growth of the Supreme. He will be a finished product. He will be contactable. He will exercise earned experiential sovereignty over the 7 superuniverses. And this is a sovereignty like that which Michael exercises over the local universe. In the beginning, Michael exercised no such sovereignty. He was what he was by virtue of the fact that he was a creator son. Now he rules because he has demonstrated his fitness to rule. He lived the finest human life that was ever lived in this local universe. He also proved 6 other times his fitness to rule. He has experientially established his sovereignty. It rests on an evolutionary experiential foundation. He does not rule by divine right. He inaugurated his mission out here by divine right. The Supreme Being will rule as an experiential deity. And the Supreme Being is going to do for us something pretty important. He is going to be an understandable deity. He has an origin in time. Isn't that nice? We don't have to stretch and say, but he never really began. He began as we began. He grew as we have grown. We will understand the Supreme, and we will be expository of the Supreme. I hesitate to use the word revelatory. It's a little too potent. But we can explain him because we're like him. We're evolutionary beings. For the same reason that Jesus could explain the universal Father, because he was like him, a divine creator. At the end of our present universe age, just think, evil, sin is gone. It's every world has achieved experiential perfection. It is a perfected world, in contrast to a Havona world, which is a perfect world. This is the appearance of what the papers call the secondary finite maximums. Havoners being primary finite maximums. We are finite incompletes now. But a 7th stage finaliter would be a secondary finite maximum. A 6th stage finaliter isn't a completed being yet. He's still growing. He's on 3rd base though. This is like point and counterpoint, or thesis and antithesis. A primary finite maximum is a being born in perfection, created in perfection. A secondary finite maximum is a being who starts out by evolution and achieves equality of perfection. He's gone the full route. He is now the peer of this primary. These are coordinate beings. We won't discuss tertiary finite maximums. That'll confuse you a little more. But tertiary finite maximums are creature trinitized sons. Now, does the thing stop there? No. There's another level. I should put undivided deity and corporate on the blackboard again. We used this illustration last year, and it's been pretty well received. Let's consider a firehouse, and I want a firehouse because I want that pole that the firemen slide down. That's the dotted line. It's a 3-story firehouse. When we talked about everything on the other side of the looking glass, we were discussing the 3rd floor, strictly. Nothing but the 3rd floor. The minute creation started, we're dealing with the next 2 floors. Because at the creative level, God projected 2 levels which were to stand in contrast to the absolute level. First, he projected the finite level. And the finite level is characterized by time, space, and experience. Now, the absolute level is timeless, spaceless, and existential. And the finite level has no more contact with the absolute level than does the first floor with the third floor there. They don't touch at any point. You just don't register. So this requires the projection of an intermediate level, the absonite level. In these papers, the absonite level is defined as a pre-echo of the finite level. In other words, it's just as logical to think of it as coming after as it is before. The absonite level is not timeless. It transcends time. A timeless being has no time consciousness. Best illustration I can think of is Jesus' thought adjuster. It was timeless. And he warned the master. He said, now look, you don't want to get involved in any abrogation of natural law. Now, as concerns space, I'm in perfect command of the situation. If you idly wish you're in Rome, it won't happen. I'm space conscious. Adjuster would have to be, otherwise how would he find us? But he said, I'm not time conscious. Time to me has absolutely no meaning. So if you want to do something which merely involves the shortening of time, I can't help you. I don't work on that wavelength. And a thought adjuster, in terms of time relationships, is up on the third floor. Now, a transcendentaler, an absonite being, like an architect of the master universe or a force organizer, they know all about time and space. They're perfectly conscious of time and space and transcend time and space. They're not timeless. They're not spaceless. They are time transcenders. They are space transcenders. When we go to paradise, we're going to find the Father. We're going to be working at the bottom of the finite level. We're going to get into the center pole, and this is the universal Father. It's a genuine, legitimate finding of the Father on the most limited basis possible. It is the minimum finding of the universal Father. As finalators, we go out and successively serve in super-universes other than our Bantan. And each time we come back to paradise, we find the same universal Father, but we're up a little bit on the center pole. You know, it's a long ways between the floor and the ceiling of the finite level. And believe me, the finalators are not at the ceiling, although they're a decent ways up. When we want to see what is total deity on the finite level, well, what we're asking to see is, how does the Trinity personify on the finite level? We want to meet Mr. Trinity. There is no Mr. Trinity. The Trinity is a corporation. You don't need a corporation. It's a legal person, but not a person. We'll be shown the seventh master spirit. This is the nearest thing this is the infinite spirits concept of what the Father, Son, and Spirit would be alike if they were alike. That's fine. But someday, if we can find the Supreme Being, then they can say to us, this is the Paradise Trinity, as the Paradise Trinity is comprehensible to finite creatures. But we'll have to reach the ceiling of the first floor to do that, because that's the age of light and life, the ceiling of the first floor. The Supreme Being will mean to us then, in our effort to understand total deity, that's what we're studying here, the function of total deity, just what the personality of Jesus means to us right here and now in our effort to comprehend personal deity. I don't understand the universal Father. I don't understand the divinity of Jesus. But I jolly well do understand the humanity of Jesus. I understand the Son of Man. I'm intrigued with the Son of God. But they're the same person. And that helps me live with my failure to understand his divinity. I do understand one pole of him. The other pole is still shrouded in some mystery. But I know it's the same person. I know I like him. I know I'm going to like his divinity because I do like his humanity. The Supreme Being is going to do something else for us. He's going to help us break through into the second floor. Incidentally, there's where we'll start in equipping all that roughed out plumbing, you know. We have capacity to do this. The papers tell us this. The Supreme Being will help us break out of the finite level just as Jesus helps us break out of the material level. He's a living bridge. Like God, he's no respecter of persons. Only he works with totals because he's a total deity. The Father deals with each of us as individuals. The Supreme Being will not deal with any of us until he can deal with all of us. The Father emphasizes the each relationship. The Supreme Being emphasizes the all relationship. You believe, the Father welcomes you into the family. Jesus' story of the prodigal son well illustrates the attitude of the universal Father where love is paramount. But this isn't enough for the Supreme Being. You've got to produce. He needs us. Therefore, he awards those of us who are productive. You can get rank with the universal Father, but you can get campaign ribbons with battle stars only from the Supreme Being. And this means you have to be there and do something. Now, we're going to consider the second universe age, the third universe age. Because the minute we deal with the seventh level of the function of total deity, we've got to break out of the present age. We've got to consider the wide-spreading areas of the outer space levels. Because up there, a second experiential deity is in process of growth, just as the Supreme Being is growing in the present age. There are 4 outer space levels. Last year we did some arithmetic. Now let's just take it for granted this year. We based our arithmetic on clues given in the papers. And we had to make some assumptions, and wherever we needed to, where there were 2 possible assumptions, we chose the more conservative of the 2. And here are the rough magnitudes we worked out. This whole book is mostly about the 7 super-universes in Havona, right? And we said, let's get some sizes to think about. If we think of the 7 super-universes in Havona as being roughly like a tennis ball, what would that be in relationship to the first outer space level? Well, it adds up to a very small bedroom or a very large closet. Think of a room which is 8 cubic feet, 8 by 8 by 8. But what's this room?
19 by 22.
19 by 22. So if we figured about a third of this room, it wouldn't be too bad, would it? In other words, if I got up and stood about here, this wouldn't be too far off from 8 cubic feet, would it? Sound reasonable? Can you see a tennis ball hanging in the middle? It's pretty small in relation to the room, isn't it? That's the first outer space level. Now, to visualize that in relation to the second outer space level, we should get a city block Visualize a city block with 8 building sites on it. These are generous lots, 100 feet. Get your block squared out, same on all sides. It's a square block, and then go up 800 feet. Put our small room in the middle of that city block. We've got it. That's the second outer space level. I picked cubic Chicago for my third outer space level. I want a 16-mile cube. Toss the city block in the cubic city. You get the third outer space level. And for the fourth outer space level, I picked the moon, even though it's somewhat undersized. I'm about 30% shy in my volume of the moon. This book is written about the tennis ball. When we move from the first floor to the second floor, we've now got to think in terms of the magnitude of the moon. This is too big. All you can do is feel it. But we are going out there, so they tell us. This is what we're in training for. Now look, when God really pervades a human life, you get a flavor such as you find in the life of Jesus. If that seems too tough to look at, consider the impact which Jesus had on the lives of the 12 apostles. And you can see what even a secondary impact does. We're talking about spiritual growth now. You know the long story of the ascent to paradise. You know that it's tough. It's not easy. You're not a milk toaster when you get up there. What is it? Long since you've learned to feast upon uncertainty, to fatten on disappointment, to show indomitable courage when confronted by immensities. Long since your battle cry has become, in liaison with God, nothing, absolutely nothing is impossible. These are tough, salty veterans as well as sweet people. Consider the training a finaliter gets. Consider the tremendous training that lies ahead for the finaliters, because these 7 super universes are going to be around for a long time and they're still growing. Gee whiz, our local universe isn't anywhere near settled in light and life. Michael's only got life planted on about 1/3 of the projected worlds. This universe is 2/3 unstarted. We haven't even got the subdivisions opened up yet, much less the sewage. This is still inside the tennis ball. What's a 7th stage finality going to be like? As they say, they think that when we enter the 7th stage of spirit existence, this will be the last of the jubilees of time and will inaugurate the first of the jubilees of eternity. What are finaliters going to be like in the 4th outer space level? Have you any way, even faintly, to grasp at the time involved, fellow Bantus? We are up against 1, 2, 3, and now we've hit many. And 1, 2, 3 represents our limit of time comprehension. This is many. Many, many. We're going out there. This whole development involves uncoupling 3 new levels of human personality. We're told that we have 7 dimensions of personality expression. And I think Bud made a pretty good explanation of that when he said it's like building a house. And you know you're going to grow, and you only want to pour these foundations once. You're going to provide for 7 bathrooms. But you're only going to have use for 3 of them, which are the 3 we're using now. So what do? You rough in the plumbing for the other 4. And now we're going to start equipping 3 out of these 4 to operate. These have been lying here dormant all this time. Now we're going to open up a new annex, a new wing. Yes?
Pardon me, please. I have a question here about this abstinence that I wrote quite some time ago when I first read it. Is that our mortal goal I've written, to reach absonite levels of super creature attainment? Is that our mortal limitation?
That's our post-universe age goal. We can't do it in this age. We can fumble with it. We can fumble with it. Here's what we'll encounter. We're told that differences of attitude, feeling, and response persist forever. For example, males and females are still going to exhibit characteristic non-sexual qualities of maleness and femaleness in the core of the finality. We'll intrigue each other. We'll think a little differently, thank heaven. What was it the Frenchman says, vive la difference? Intellectually, we even off at the end of the Moranchi career. That is to say, we have equivalent horsepower of brains, mind. This doesn't mean that the artist will be adept as a physicist. We'll still have our specialties, you know? We'll still be highly individualized. But we'll have equal basic brain power. We will encounter spiritual differentials. These won't even out until we enter the core of the finality. Then we will have equal spiritual capacities, responsiveness, or quality. And when we even out spiritually, then we discover a new differential, absonite differential. We become conscious of this. So we're working at it. I think at the upper limits of the first floor, we begin to get repercussions from the second floor, even though we aren't there yet. You know, you get to Uversa, who do you find there? Havona Servitals down there, working. They're getting you ready for Havona. You aren't at the Havona level yet, but you're dealing with Havoners up on the super-universe capital. There's an overlap there. The word absonite is used in this sense. The architects of the Master Universe are referred to as having wonderful minds, superb spirits, and supernal absonites. This is a quality of being, analogous to mind and spirit. We know nothing about this. The word absonite is a word which is used as an adjective to designate the second floor of the firehouse.
You say it utilizes part of absolute and part
It seems to be a mix, yeah, it's a coined word. Yeah.
I just noticed that. It's very obvious, but...
They also use the word transcendental to apply to the second floor and speak of absoniters or transcendentalers as living on that floor. That's a good word. They transcend time and space. They define the attributes of deity as they appear on the second floor are omnipotence, omnipresence, and omniscience. These are not absolute attributes of deity. They are ultimate attributes of deity. The Supreme Being, for example, is not omnipresent. He is ubiquitous, which means many presences, but not omnipresent. He's not limited to one presence, but he's not everywhere. The infinite spirit, through his creative daughters, is ubiquitous in the seven super-universes. Each local universe mother spirit pervades her local universe and nowhere else. See, she's a space-conscious being. And if she weren't space-conscious, she wouldn't know where to stop being. And you'd get conflict between two local universes. Where she is, that is Nebada. And when you go outside of her, you've gone outside of Nebada. Now, when you get up to the absolute level, you have presence, which is beyond omnipresence. This is a presence quite apart from space. On this absonite level, I like that word, it's handy, short. We're going adventuring. We're being commissioned to work out in these outer space levels. Why? All right. Why do the counselors come down? The Paradise Sons come down. Come out, I should say. into time and space to work with us. We need them. We're imperfect. We need a lot of help from beings who have more of perfection, even much of perfection. They've got to be a ladder that we've got to climb. How could you explain God except by living him as Jesus did? I mean, you look at his life, and the papers are right. His life is greater than his teachings. That's the same reason we're going out there. They need us. Why do they need us? They're being deprived of something. Well, what is it? The Supreme Being has finished his growth. And the kind of growth that we know about will then be a permanently past event in all creation. We can grow as we grow because we are plugged into the Supreme Being. We share in his growth. This whole experiential evolutionary process requires the growing presence of the Supreme Being. And when he's finished his growth, it's over. No beings will ever again grow as we are growing today. These beings out in outer space will benefit from his presence. We suffer from his absence. They'll benefit from his presence, but they can't have his presence and also participate in his growth. We've hit another inevitability here, haven't we? You can't make square circles. You can't be a part of something incomplete and enjoy it as a completion. They are going to be lacking the very thing which we are, which is experiential, evolutionary beings. It's up to us to compensate them for this deprivation, just as the beings of the central creation try to atone to us what we lack because we are starting in imperfection. We've got a mission out there. Our goal out there is to go in quest of the Father all over again. You see, if we can go through this tremendously long period of growth, going from the tennis ball to the moon, I can't grasp that. I can say it, but it doesn't really mean anything to me, except I can feel that I'm trying to cope with something that is. I'm a Bantu trying to visualize 1,000. And beyond 3, I've got the word many, that's all. In fact, I'm worse off. I think I'm trying to visualize 1 trillion as a Bantu. We're in quest of the Father. We're in quest of God the Ultimate, who is on the 2nd floor, what God the Supreme is on the 1st floor. And if we can ever graduate from the 2nd floor, we're going to know God the Ultimate. And this is probably possible. This merely requires an unbelievably long stretch of time. We're told that we have 3 unexpressed dimensions of personality which can be expressed on the absonite level. So I think we've got the equipment to work up there. You see, when the Father gives us the thought adjuster and gives us personality, he's given us a tremendous lot of equipment. This is good for the whole race. This is good for the whole race. All during this time, we are exploring 2 ways. We are exploring the reality of the Universal Father on superfinite levels. And at the same time, we are exploring the reality of this thought adjuster within us. Example, they tell us when we fuse with our thought adjuster, and one of the things which the adjuster contributes to the combined nature of the fused being is past eternal memory. But I don't think we can cope. I think we have to live forward long enough to be able to think equally far backward. So that if we live a million years forward, I think then we can cope with what the thought adjuster is trying to give us. We can think a million years backward. And if it's 10 trillion years, then we can go that much farther backward. And someday we will look back on units of 10 trillion years and understand what they mean. They will then become as days are today in our planning. And we can each know the truth of this because we feel it in our own lives. A week is not a long time to an adult. A week is a very long time to a little child. This is the best way I can understand time transcendence.